Here we are at RSA, a very exciting week ahead of us, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by Yoran and Tony here from Seemplicity. We're going to talk a little bit about what we're expecting to see this week. We'll dive into a bit more detail around things like exposure management, what's really critical in the market, and a couple more things that's going to be exciting to unpack. But before I dive into all of that, thank you for joining me here today. Give us a bit of an introduction to yourselves and maybe give us a bit more insight into what you guys are looking for this week.
I'm Yoran, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Seemplicity. We established the company 5 years ago. Really happy to be here. We will see tomorrow when they will open the exhibition, a lot of new companies focusing on different areas, A lot of them create more and more noise. That our job is actually to collect and to assist the people to fix it.
Yeah, and I'm Tony Thompson. Thank you, Yoran, and excited to be here running marketing for Seemplicity. And it's a journey for a marketing leader to come to RSA and to be able to try and cut through all this noise that we're dealing with at this show and this conference. It's always a reunion, and it's always great to see everybody that's coming around. But for a marketer and for all the marketers that are here, it's a challenge, right? And you have to be able to distinguish yourself. So we're excited about that. We're doing that with WTF. We've got the hats. We've got the idea of redefining what WTF is. It's about what's the fix, where's the fix, who's the fixer, why the fix matters. So hopefully that's a vehicle for us to cut through a bit more.
Absolutely. It's great to have you here. And for people tuning in, you actually can't see, but these guys have got a really cool space booked out this week. And let's start with that because you just touched on something, Tony. The conference is noisy. We were talking earlier about how busy that floor is. It feels like going through Matrix. It's overwhelming, overstimulating. But when you're coming to these conferences, you really need to stand out proud. And we'll touch base in terms of the technology in a little bit. But even if we're just looking from the branding perspective, obviously merchandise, we see the hats, we see the shirts, and it's important to have something that defines a little bit different. It's unique, holds attention, WTF. So tell us a little bit about how you've approached RSA this year, because obviously making the decision to take a step away from the floor, do something a bit different, is obviously unique, but we're seeing a little bit more of it.
I think it's a really good question because I think the cybersecurity industry is full of these WTF moments. And it's not in the literal sense, but like even in what's the fix and where's the fix. And I think everyone in cyber is trying to really understand, like, how do I get my arms around the problem that still persists, where they have too much data, too many findings, too much to look at, and not enough action is being taken place to be able to really get ahead of the problem. And so for us, WTF is a way to cut through. We're doing it here at the Rick House, which is off-site on Kearney. We definitely encourage folks, depending on when this runs, we want them to come by. We'll give them a hat. They get in there to win a prize. But again, for us, WTF is one of those vehicles to try and cut through. We just have to be able to break through the noise, get people to understand that we are a fixing company. We're part of the fix, rather than just trying to process the data. I don't know if you have any thoughts there.
Yeah, so I think I will continue with the term of Tony regarding the noise. I think that we all been for the last couple of years about noise cancellation capabilities. It is so difficult in those days to go about the noise, and there are so many companies, new companies, each of them claim to do everything. So I think that what we really try to do is to reduce the noise. Today we connect to more than 200 of those guys that you will meet tomorrow in the floor. We collect their data, try to reduce the noise and make it actionable. That's exactly what we do. So it's more focused on what we do.
And I think obviously it's coming from two different perspectives as well, though, because obviously Tony's bringing that marketing insight at how we go through, but from the technology perspective, again, we touched on this just beforehand, because when you talk about cyber, it's a rapidly evolving landscape. Like, we were talking 2 years ago, the key technology that we've seen at RSA is almost obsolete, redundant, some of it, because we're seeing advances with things like AI, we're seeing advances with just where the threat landscape is evolving into. But one thing that we talked about is how exposure management has always been a demand. We're seeing investment, we're seeing everything out there. I think it'd be interesting to get your perspective though, when we're talking about how noisy that shop floor is. Let's say shop floor, because that's pretty much what it is. But obviously you guys, you've continued that road, you see the demand still accelerating. There's obviously a reason for that. But if we just dive into, why is this something that is not becoming obsolete, redundant, is something that's still on that pathway to have the demand?
Yeah. So I think that what we see is what we see on the floor is a very clear trend. AI become more accessible, more wide, broader use by attackers, and therefore when the attackers are using advanced technology that are incorporated in so many ways, the defender should also use the same way. What we see in the last, say, couple of years is that the attack surface become broader and broader. And therefore, in order to protect your organization, you need to actually to defend it from more vertical or some more, say, domains. And therefore, the defenders have a challenging role. It's become more and more difficult for them. And therefore, I think that what we see is that our domain, the exposure management domain, is evolving and developing all the time. Try to actually to catch more and more with the trends of adding more and more noise, more and more tools.
We were talking earlier that it's a good news, bad news situation for a vendor that's in this market, because the exciting thing is you're in the hottest segment in cyber. I think this is a legitimate opinion in that everybody's trying to get their arms around exposure management, vulnerability management. The bad news and the difficult news for these companies that are coming in is you've got large players, you've got new startups coming out of stealth. Everybody's gravitating to the market, so the noise level is just continuing to go up, which presents more of a challenge.
I think that's it. When you know you're in the right kind of part of the industry, when you're constantly seeing competitors come through, and that's part of the challenge as well. You want that. If you were the only people doing it 5 years down the line, you'd be like, what is no one else catching on here? But obviously, like you mentioned, the thing is as well, when we've got such a noisy floor, how do you guys, what's the approach if you're like, how do we stand out from this crowd? So not only is everybody down there, but thinking, okay, but what do I prioritise? And especially when you look at the defenders, their budgets aren't exactly the most forgiving. They're probably, okay, you've got X amount of money. Where do you prioritise? How do you split it? That's challenge number one. And then obviously challenge number two, once you've made that decision, okay, exposure management, somebody we need to prioritise here. How do you then pick what direction's going? How are you guys going about defining that? Not just this week. It is obviously some cycles this week. It's still that ongoing thing within the last.
I'll start with my perspective, and then Yoran's going to have definitely a good perspective here. I think we have to start with outcomes. I think what people and the buyers that are coming to this show, folks like Hertz and folks like other large companies that are trying to understand what's going on, you have to start with an outcome. What is this? Why is this going to change my environment and my life without just peanut buttering AI on your booth or peanut buttering on your, I know he likes the peanut butter analogy, but it's the truth. Vendors everywhere are just literally peanut buttering AI on their booths, on their signage, on their website. You have to go the next layer deeper. Help me understand the value, the benefit, the outcome that I'm getting out of this and why it's going to help my life day in and day out.
Yeah. And I think that one thing that we see really that's evolving, that I think that 3, 4, 5 years ago, we had to explain why you need it. But then we see more and more customers that come to us to understand how we do it. It is, at the end of the day, when we try to fix a broken process, people are aware about it, people are looking and searching. We also see more and more customers that approach us on a regular basis, looking for a solution because they have too much noise.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. We were talking about it earlier again, when we were saying that so much of what people are doing at the moment is they help identify the problems. They'll be out there and be like, hey, look, this is where you've got a gap or a vulnerability or whatever it may be. But like we were saying, that just gives a CISO or whoever that security leader is sleep night. And I think obviously based on is how it's more about the solution here. It's about, this isn't an afterthought. This is okay, you've got a problem. What do you solve it? It's okay. Like, you don't need to be stressed all the time. But before we unpack and close off, anything that you guys want to add to this? I know we've touched base on a few different things here. It's an exciting week. There's loads going on. But yeah, anything that maybe we've missed off that you want to make sure anybody tuning in that they really need to take away from the episode or they're going to take away from the week.
I love it how the CEO passes it back to me. Like, he's like, marketing guy, you answer it. All right, that's good. Look, I would say WTF is something we want people to remember because we think we have lightning in a bottle with this campaign, and it's a campaign for the entire industry, and we want them to realize we are putting the fix in WTF, and that's really what I think buyers and the customer is interested in doing. I want them to remember that. I want them to remember to go to Seemplicity.io or .ai AI, either one, and come check us out. We can give them a very short demo. We can actually show them value within about a 7-day period with an assessment report that they can understand their vulnerability exposure and everything that's happening in their environment completely free. I think it's something they should take us up on. So that's what I would encourage them. I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, I think that everyone understands today that remediate and mitigate risk is complex and cumbersome. We try to simplify it. That's why we also choose our name. No, we try to simplify everything, and that's what we messed up. Yeah.
I'm the newer marketing guy.
Any excuse.
So that's it.
No, guys, this has been fantastic. The space is great. There's obviously been lots of thought behind it. If you can't already see the colours and everything, it's a good spot to get to. And like you've heard here, get connected to the team, find out a bit more, and ultimately, if you've got this 7-day, there's never any risk to that commitment or giving it a try, is there? But thank you for tuning in. Excited to see everybody here further this week. We'll catch you all later for more conversations shaping cyber.